But right there in 1859, they built a town hall. In the town hall, they wanted to be different from Yale. So they very consciously say it's in the Gothic style, which is rare in this country but well known in Europe. And indeed, they base it on an English, typical English mid-century town hall. Now, Yale there had been this little Gothic church. Yale had built a little Gothic library back here, but this is really mid-century Gothic. And it's a big building. And notice what it is when Venturi talks about the decorated shed. It's only this front bay that tells the story. Behind it is just a barn. But you don't see it. It's designed to be a facade, and the buildings on both sides, so you don't see it back there. The mayor's office is one level up, perfect place in relation to the green. But imagine if you were a citizen of the town at that time. Say you were on a preservation board or something. What would you feel about this thing intruding in this? I mean, it would really be a problem. Would you fight it tooth and nail? The way we fought the mall over there across the street? Or, because look, it changes everything. Completely throws it out of scale. Completely out of whack. It's doomed. The whole place is doomed once that's there. What would you do? What if they never allowed it? Well, it'd be nice there if it never changed, but it would probably be all boutiques. Well, maybe that'd be all right. I mean, that's okay. What's wrong with a boutique? I mean, it's all consumerism anyway today. But I don't know. But anyway, see, it's a problem. It's a question not easy to answer. What do you do? And they said, it's new, it's Gothic. And they want it to be different. But they have a spire, you see, their own. Then in 1869, they say And in 1869, it says it needs a better presence on the green. So it adds to it. You see, there it is right here. It's beginning to start in Eric's. They want the annex, which comes out like that. And you get more presence. But notice it's really good. They keep it back. So you get the integrity of the tower and of the mayor's office right there at that point. And this is kind of, I think, a wonderful little building. It really faces, you know how you feel this thing facing? In this direction. Faces the important place. You feel it in better photographs. You feel it very much like this. It's wonderful, dense 19th century intensity as it faces the green. So this faces Yale. It seems a meek enough challenge, but what did Yale do? Yale immediately, right after the Civil War, they stepped forward of the old brick row. They took down the Yale fence and brought it inside. And right along here, they tore down the President's house, put it elsewhere. Right along here, they built a fortress with no entrances on this side except one gate in the middle. So you could no longer enter from that side. The townsfolk could no longer move through the campus. And you, instead of this relationship as being a community relationship, now begin to get two quadrangles closed off. The university is closing itself off from the town. And they use Gothic architecture too. And it seems modeled on, say, Viollet-le-Duc's reconstructions of medieval fortresses, castles. It's fortification architecture. My room was right up there in 1936. There. I didn't realize what a historical place I was in, you know. I didn't register looking out in the green. Really wonderful. But it's a fortification. It's there against the town. And this is the other thing, too. The other buildings they began to build, this is the first art school in any university. It's around the corner on Chapel Street. It's Ruskinian Gothic. And it's a little bit like today. It's like most of the architects today who are doing all the wonderfully over-designed, arty buildings, saying they can't build with brick anymore. You know, that is brick. It's got to be masonry now. It's got to be very special for its place. It's got to be based on highest theory, that is Ruskin. And you get this whole business of the architecture has got to be different. The idea of type is lost. That's the point. The idea of the type out of which a city is made is lost. And because of that, you see, they say right away, and here's the new thing with its entrance only inside, the Yale fence eventually is brought to here. There's the old brick row. They build out in front of it, and right away they began tearing it down. Because you see, it looked like those factories. But you really didn't look. That's very clear, it's all documented. And so they tore them all down, and in the end, you had this closed quadrangle, like this. And the last one was Connecticut Hall. And the last president, Dwight, who wanted to tear it down, died before he could, and on his deathbed, he expressed his dismay that he hadn't been able to destroy Connecticut Hall, which was ruining his artistic campus. It's fascinating, like this. But so there you have this closed world of the English college, an Anglican image that the Puritans, John Detmore, would have hated, cut off from the rest of the town. This very special, elitist, closed, but very beautiful, closed garden with its own frontispiece. Oh yes, and you say, which would you prefer? You see, I always ask students that. They go here, is it better this way, or would it have been better that way? It's not easy to answer, again. It's wonderfully contained and quiet in this way, and it's kind of a wonderful sense that you're related to things that way, but they're very different feelings. It's like me being intimidated by this building, which you may regard as pretty easy stuff, I don't know, but whatever the case. It's, again, not an easy question. A basic urban question. It has nothing to do with style. It has to do with empathy, with your physical relationship to the surroundings, really. And so what's the answer? Now, it's interesting that the plan then, and they build right here, Phelps Gateway, one gate in, and a very intimidating gate. It's sending a message. The message isn't very clear, but it's sort of, we're English. It's kind of an English thing. It looks like Hampton Court or something. We're special here. And it's there, and that's the one way in. Otherwise, you're closed. And it's at the high part of the green, too, the green. So there's Yale, or so many New Haveners, they see it as the enemy looming up there. All the money, all the housing, all the room. Anyway. So it's a fascinating problem, because then the plan, the way it develops, as you come on into the beginning of the 20th century, is that here's what now becomes called the old campus, right here. And then it goes up, and then here you see there's always that I was going to say that damn cemetery. I can't say that, but there's always that cemetery, which is blocking it. And there's this very weak connection right there. Now, the next movement at Yale was very rare there. It was the garden, it was the City Beautiful movement, and with classical architecture. And the major City Beautiful building was right here. It's going to be part of a Memorial Quadrangle, of which the rest wasn't built. And this is one in keeping with the urbanistic sense that the City Beautiful movement had. This one tried to address this problem of being blocked that way and having to go diagonal to pick up basically Hill House Avenue, which is your basic movement up to the sciences, which are up here on Hill House Hill. Science Center, they call it now, up there. And you see it's broken. He doesn't come through. It's not connected. And so they do the best they can. Very different than that view. They do the best they can to have that, address that situation. Oh, sorry. Forgetting which ones I'm using. They show it here. You see it in the plan there. It comes out. It's kind of a timid dome and drum, but whatever the case. It takes you diagonally through a series of spaces, out diagonally, and the cemetery is right there, and it kind of moves you in this direction. But it's just crying for physical connection at that point. Now, then the next thing they built, though, was just the opposite. They threw out the classic. They didn't like it. The associations were wrong. And they built here the Memorial Quadrangle, which later became two colleges like this. And this was built by James Gamble Rogers, starting in 1917. You see it picks up the closed quadrangle effect of the old campus, and it really closes it into a series of quadrangles and then smaller courts within one. And one has to say, without question, it's the richest, lushest, most talented Gothic architecture in America, in my view. It's all closed against the town. It even has a moat in many places. Of course, the moat makes a lot of sense because you can open all the windows right out in the garden, but you're not on the street. Nevertheless, it's closed against the town. And yet, as it defines the streets, it steps back. It's like a work of nature here. The major court is here, smaller courts like this. And his wonderful sense of variety takes big shapes and breaks. It's amazing, because outside of Yale, he was a pretty good architect, but here, somehow Rogers was somehow inspired. And associations now are very important. See, we experience architecture by empathy, which is our physical association with the object viewed, but also through association with what we know, with what our culture tells us, with what we relate to over time. And this is an Oxford tower. So he introduces it, but he breaks down big into small down here in this wonderful courtyard. And there isn't any question, Andrus will tell you, that he learned more, really, from James Gamble Rogers than he did from Lou Kahn or Paul Rudolph or whoever had been at Yale. And it's interesting, Andrus wrote me a letter, which I quoted in the book, where Andrus said, "Last night I dreamed about the Yale campus. It was the most beautiful place in the world. I will describe it to you sometime." But he never has, really, since that time. But the sense of community, you see, getting along with a type, which you then can modify in a sense of dense community, that Rogers was very good at. And each one of these colleges, which then developed from this in the 20s and early 30s, is a wonderful classic, a wonderful garden, a secret garden, like the Yale Secret Societies. Beautifully secret, closed off from outside, and with these great statements about who we are. Harkness Tower rising like this.